Okay, good evening, everyone. Welcome to Baiju's Exam Prep IAS. This is Sham Kagudia. Now, before I start the discussion, if there is no issue with the sound, please give me a thumbs up. Done. Okay, thanks a lot. Let's start. So, welcome to the GS Paper 3 webinar now. In this particular paper, we will have a discussion regarding certain very important mains-based topics-based discussion from Indian economy. Okay. Now, with this particular caveat, what are the topics we'll be discussing today? First topic will be, is there a requirement of having a reset of inflation target? What is that? We'll have a discussion. Please don't panic. Second one, what is the concept of dark patterns? Very recently, there is a list of guidelines which have been announced by the government. What is this dark pattern? Why there is an issue? What is the guideline which has been announced, etc. We'll have a look at it. Third one is, very recently Government of India celebrated 9 years of Pradhana Mantri Janadhan Yojana. What are the important points regarding PMJDY? What has been the impact of it, right? What is the benefit of it, etc. We'll have a look at it. Fourth important topic that I'll be discussing will be, is a GDP growth efficient or let's say sufficient for Indian economy? Basically, the argument is, very recently Government of India, let's say the Prime Minister, in various speeches has argued that in the next couple of years, India's economy will become the third largest, fourth largest, or let's say second largest, etc. So, what is the importance of that? Right? Should we target only GDP? What is the concern, etc.? The two articles, last two articles, one is related to vision for industry. Second one is agriculture sector, a journey from shortage to surplus. Both of these articles I've taken from Yojana magazine. So let me start the discussion here. The first topic that we'll be discussing, the first topic will be, does inflation target requires a reset? Do we need to reset inflation target? Now, those students who are asking, what is inflation? Point number one. Let's start with very basics here, but I'll not discuss the whole inflation because that would require around 3 hours. We cannot spend 3 hours in a webinar for 2 hours. That's a fact. So, what is inflation? Whenever you look at certain basket of goods and services, if the prices of goods and services will increase over a period of time, if you are paying overall higher prices for goods and services, that is called basically inflation. In case of India, please remember, the government of India has signed an agreement with Reserve Bank of India. I repeat, government of India has. Now, this agreement very famously is referred to as Monetary Policy Framework Agreement. Monetary Policy Framework Agreement. Now, what does the Monetary Policy Framework Agreement say? As per MPFA. This is in short called as MPFA. As per Monetary Policy Framework Agreement, it is basically the role of Reserve Bank of India to maintain inflation. I repeat, it should be the role or the duty of Reserve Bank of India to maintain inflation in India. That is the first very important point. Now, what should be the inflation rate then? What should be the target? If RBI has to maintain inflation, what should be the target for RBI? Government of India generally decides inflation target for 5 years. I'll repeat it. Government of India generally decides what is the inflation target for RBI for 5 years. For 2016 to 2021, all of you can count it now. For 5 years, what was the inflation target given by Government of India to RBI? 4%. After that, we have started implementing next set of 5 years from 2021 to 2026. What is the inflation target even now? It is still 4%. Okay, it is still 4%. So for first 5 years, 4%. Even now, the inflation target given by Government of India to RBI is 4%. But what has happened? What has happened? In recent times, if you have seen, recent times, especially post-pandemic in case of India, not just in India, but also in many other countries, including India, by the way, inflation is not at around 4%. Inflation is much beyond 4%. For example, in India, last year, if you look at it, last year, calendar year I'm talking about, for majority period of this, for majority period of it, that is specifically from the month of January till the month of October, inflation was never near 4%. It was always more than 4%. In fact, it was somewhere around 6%. And even this year, if you're reading newspapers, you will know that inflation is not around 4%. It is beyond 6% even in the recent times. So now the argument is very simple. Argument is that, is it time for government of India to look at inflation target and restructure, or basically have a new inflation target? Because earlier you have set up an inflation target of 4%. But are we able to control inflation at 4%? No. It is beyond 4%, it is 6%, it is 6.5, 6.4%, etc. etc. Now, some of you might be thinking, sir, if inflation is more than 6%, what is the problem? Why should we even target inflation? What is the problem? Let it be 6%, let it be 7%, let it be 8%, etc. Argument is very simple here. Whenever inflation is more than 4%, especially more than 6, more than 7, more than 8%, etc., point number one, all of us, right, who are earners, who are consumers in the market, don't you think our purchasing power would be affected? Correct? Our purchasing power would be affected if inflation rate is 7, 8, 9, 10. So in that situation, you can imagine to what extent our purchasing power will come down. But more importantly, please understand this. If inflation rate remains more than 6%, up to 7, 6.5 like this, then RBI does not have any option but to increase interest rates. I hope you understand my point. RBI does not have any option but to increase interest rates. RBI will start to increase interest rates. And what is the impact of higher interest rates? If RBI will increase interest rates, loans will become more costlier. You'll have to pay more rate of interest when you take a loan. Companies will have to take loans at a higher rate of interest. And that will definitely have an impact on investments. Companies now will be concerned about paying higher rate of interest. They will reduce the amount of loans they are taking. That will have a huge amount of impact on investment scenario in India. That would be a problem for government of India. That would be problem for overall Indian economy. So now argument is simple. Because your target is 4%, now inflation rate is 6.5%, RBI has to increase interest rates. RBI has to increase repo rate, etc. But rather than this, because the inflation rate consistently has remained 6%, 6.5%, why not change the target? Think of it. Why not simply change the target? Why not simply change the target from 4% to 6%? Now, if your target is 6% and your inflation rate is 6.4%, not much of a difference. RBI doesn't have to increase the interest rates or repo rates. So that will not have a huge impact on investment scenario in the economy. So that would be the argument here. That is the reason there is a lot of discussion. In fact, I think, okay, and no issues. In fact, couple of weeks ago, there were a couple of articles, one in Mint newspaper, another in Economic Times. One in Mint, another one in Economic Times, saying that there is a need for government of India to have a look at the inflation target, right? So that is the reason I've taken this particular article. So all of you okay with this argument? Now, what is the situation in India? What is the situation? If you look at multiple countries, but focus on Indian economy, here is India for you. The inflation target that has been given by government of India is 4%. Inflation target is 4%. And here itself we'll have to make an observation. What is the observation? Is the inflation target similar in all the countries? Is it the same in all the countries? Of course, no. For example, in case of USA, what is the inflation target? In USA, the inflation target is 2%. What about inflation target in UK? Inflation target in UK is also 2%. But if you look at most of the countries which are listed here, whatever inflation target is there for the current year on a year monthly average inflation rate for the current year, that is 2023, whatever the inflation target in these countries, the inflation that is there in the economy is much higher than the target. For example, for India the inflation target is 4%, but on an average inflation rate for 2023 is somewhere around 6%. In case of UK, inflation target is 2%. On an average, inflation rate is more than 8% in UK. What about USA? Inflation rate target is 2%. But on an average, inflation rate is more than 4% in USA. So I hope you understand. In most of the countries, inflation target is lower, but the inflation rate in the economy is much higher. So it is not just that Indian economy is experiencing a higher inflation rate. Across the globe, there have been instances, there have been situations because of internal factors, external factors, where inflation rate is much higher. Done. So this is the fact. Please remember this. Don't by heart numbers. Please don't by heart numbers. Please remember, it is not just India, but many other countries which are experiencing inflation. Now, some of you are asking, why should we be concerned about inflation rate in other countries? I'll explain that also. Have patience. Please understand, Indian economy, whether you like it or don't like it, Indian economy will be affected by what happens in the global market. All of you okay with this statement? Whether you like it or you don't like it, what happens in the global economy, that will definitely have an impact on Indian economy. And that is the precise reason whenever you talk about Indian economy, you cannot single out only Indian economy and think that we'll have to focus only on Indian economy and rest of the world does not matter to us. Absolutely no. What happens in USA? Will it affect India? Of course, yes. If China falls into recession, will it affect Indian economy? Of course, yes. It will definitely have an impact on Indian economy. To what extent? That will differ from one country to another country. To what extent we have a trade relations with the other country. So I hope you understand. Let me connect it to current affairs. All of you reading what is happening between India and Canada? Let me know. All of you reading what is happening between India and Canada. Now, don't you think because of this, right, whatever is there, I'm not going to get into the politics of it. Because of it, will it have an impact on the trade agreement that is being negotiated between India and Canada? Of course, yes. I hope you understand. We were having a trade related agreement. We were negotiating with Canada. But because of all these events that are taking place in the last 4 to 5 days, the FTA negotiations, free trade agreement negotiations that we were having with Canada have been stopped. So I hope you understand. There will definitely be an impact because of trade relations. There will be definitely an impact. So if inflation rate in UK is higher, in USA is higher, and if the central bankers there start to increase interest rates in UK or let's say USA, that will lead to capital flight from India. That will lead to higher outflow of investments from India. That is definitely going to have an impact on India. That is the reason we should be very careful to connect the dots between India and rest of the world. Okay, now what has been the situation in case of India? Please have a look at it. Since April 2021, inflation has been more than 6% in more than half of the months. That is from April 2021, we are in the month of September 2023. That will be somewhere around, April 21 to 22, 22 to 23. So 2 years. And after that, September will be another 6 years. So out of these, around 30 months, in more than 50% of the months, right, the inflation rate has been more than 6%. That's a cause of concern for us. That's a cause of concern. Why? If inflation consistently remains above 6%, then it simply means RBI is going to increase interest rates. That will have a limiting effect on the growth. It will affect our consumers' purchasing power, etc., etc. So, what was the situation of inflation in India before, right, the inflation targeting was implemented? After that, what has been the situation? Please observe here. Please observe. more than 4%, more than 6%. In 76% percentage of months, I hope you understand, in 76% between January 12 to July 2016, in 76% of the months, inflation rate was more than 4%. And in more than 60% of the months, inflation rate was more than 6%. Once we started implementing the inflation targeting mechanism, that is monetary policy framework agreement, 55% of the months between 16 to 21, the inflation rate was more than 4%, but the number of months or percentage of the months where inflation rate was more than 6% has drastically fallen down from 60% to 20%, which means the inflation target that we set up was actually working out. In fact, between 2016 to 2021, I repeat, between 2016 to 2021, the inflation rate on an average was somewhere around 3.8%. And from 2021, in 100% of the months, inflation rate has been above 4%, and in 54% of the months, that is more than half of the months, inflation rate has been more than 6%. So I hope you understand, since April 2021, in all these particular months, inflation rate consistently has remained above 4%, and in more than half of these months, inflation rate has been above 6%. Now, what are the reasons? Right? I'll not discuss individually the rice, wheat, onion, tomato, etc. Overall factors. What have been the reasons why inflation rate has remained above 6%? First one, external disruptions. All of you okay with this particular point? For example, the situation between Russia and Ukraine, and I believe we have discussed this at least 4 to 5 times, even in the earlier webinars. So it's nothing new. External disruptions such as Russia and Ukraine has led to higher inflation rate in India, not only in India, across the globe as well. Second one, countries have become more inward looking. This is a new point. Countries have become more and more inward looking. Now, what do you mean by inward looking? Have you come across the term protectionism? Let me know. Have you come across the term protectionism? Now, what is this idea for protectionism? These are called as inward looking policies. I'll give a very simple example. You can extrapolate. You can expand it. For example, India in recent times, is it okay if I say, has implemented tariff barriers as well as other types of barriers to control more and more exports as well as imports coming into India? Yes or no? I can give you n number of examples. Best example in current affairs is export restriction on wheat, sugar, rice, import restriction on laptops, personal computers, etc., etc. So just like India, I repeat, just like India, many other countries also have done the same thing. Just like India is doing, many other countries also have done the same thing. So whenever we import, there have been restrictions imposed by other countries, which has become a problem for us, which has increased the prices of these commodities in the international market, and that has become more costly for us. So these inward looking policies of various trading countries, various trading partners, has made not only Indian policies but also other countries trading policies, has made basically these imports more and more costly for us. That will contribute to inflation. That will automatically contribute to inflation in the domestic market. We are yet to return to normalcy after pandemic. How many of you believe that overall Indian economy, I repeat, overall Indian economy has returned to normal as it was before pandemic? Because there is a current affairs article, I want to connect this with that. How many of you are under the impression that Indian economy has become as it was, overall Indian economy, it has become as it was before pandemic? Answer is no. Absolutely no. It is yet to become normal. Why? Let me prove it. I don't know how many of you have read this article. Very recently, there was an article based on data given by Reserve Bank of India. Let me know how many of you have read it. RBI says the household savings rate have dropped to one of the lowest in multiple decades in India. Correct? Have you come across this? Important article, by the way. The household savings rate has dropped to one of the lowest levels in multiple decades in Indian economy. And that has got a lot of implications. Why? If your savings are lower, can I say your investments will also become lower? All of you okay with this supply chain basic connection? If your savings are lower, automatically investments would be lower. The amount of deposits you keep in banking sector, amount of shares you purchase, amount of bonds you purchase, automatically that will become lower. And if investments will become lower, will it have a huge impact on GDP or not? Will it have an impact on GDP? Of course, yes. It will have a huge impact on GDP. That's the reason this article is so important. That's the reason there is so much of discussion that is happening on why the household savings have actually come down. And the connection, why I'm mentioning this article is very simple. The connection is that RBI says one of the reasons savings has gone down is right, the household incomes because of pandemic has gone down. Simple. The household incomes because of pandemic has gone down. And second reason is the inflation rate in the economy is higher. Now, can everybody connect how inflation rate will have an impact on savings? Let me know. Can everybody connect how higher inflation rate will reduce your savings? Right? So I hope you understand the argument here. So we are yet to return to the normalcy after the pandemic. We are yet to return to the normalcy. Right? So inflation rate is higher. Right? Consumption is getting affected. Savings is getting affected. Supply has got disrupted. Supply is very important. Supply has got disrupted in the economy. And finally, because of various parameters, let me give a very simple current affairs example. Because of excess rainfall, will agriculture supply be affected because of excess rainfall? Or what about this El Nino, La Nina, etc., etc.? Because of a lower rainfall, will it have an impact on agriculture supply? Of course, yes. We are experiencing both of it now. Excess rainfall in unseasonal rainfall. We experienced unseasonal excess rainfall that disrupted, that basically destroyed a standing crop. And in the coming months, we are expecting lower rainfall. And in the month of August, I'm pretty sure all of you have come across this newspaper article. We basically experienced one of the lowest rainfall in the months of August for multiple years. Correct? Have you come across this article? We experienced one of the driest August. The month of August, one of the lowest rainfall we have experienced in the many years, right? More than a decade we have experienced the lowest rainfall. So automatically it will have an impact on supply. Earlier tomato prices, right, went high, more than 200 rupees. Now these are at 20 rupees, 10 rupees per kg. Now the prices of other commodities such as jeera, turmeric, etc., that is going to contribute to inflation. Pulses, that is going to contribute to inflation now. So I hope you understand. These are some of the reasons why inflation will continue to remain elevated in the Indian economy. You cannot basically expect inflation will cool down very soon. It is expected to remain elevated in the economy. And that is the reason the argument is, should we recast our inflation target? Should we restructure the inflation target? Rather than 4%, should we shift it to 6% or 5%, etc.? In fact, there is a demand in USA. I repeat, in fact, there is a demand in USA that inflation rate should not be kept at 2%. The target must be increased to more than 3%, so that we are basically changing the target as per changing economic scenario in the USA economy. Right? So that is basically the argument here. So based on this, I've given a question here. Since the headline inflation in India has remained consistently above the target set for RBI, is it time to have a relook at inflation target regime? Elaborate. 15 marker 250 words. Okay, 15 marker 250 words. Okay, so please have a look at the article. Let me know how many of you have seen the GS paper 3. Right, very recently conducted GS paper 3. Right, so was there anything that we discussed in the webinar that appeared in the GS paper 3? Let me see. Any question, right, that you felt okay, this was discussed in, right, let's say webinar. I'll give you an example also. Did we discuss the subsidies in agriculture sector, MSME in the webinars? Or right, I'll give you one more example. Electric vehicles, EVs. Electric vehicles, EVs. Right, so I hope you understand that is how UPSC will test you. Some questions are directly in from newspaper, some questions are from static subject, right, and a lot of questions were from current affairs. So that's the reason I keep on asking you, please update, update with current affairs. Okay, done. Okay, so let me go to the second article here. Did not get protectionism point. My dear, European Union very recently has imposed or has proposed to impose CBAM. Have you come across this? Environment and Ecology article, CBAM. USA earlier by, I believe in 2018, USA earlier in 2018 imposed a certain protectionist policy. That is, imposed certain restrictions or exports going from India. What I'm trying to convey to you people is very simple. In the same way, India also has imposed certain protectionist policies. Now, whenever countries impose such protectionist policies in the international market, prices will start going up. Very simple argument. The prices will start going upwards. For example, have you seen what has happened to the prices of vegetable oils when some of the exporting countries will stop or ban export of these vegetable oils? Think of it. In fact, I've discussed this also earlier. India imports a lot of these vegetable oils. We import it from countries such as Indonesia. If these countries impose a restriction over exports, what is going to happen to the vegetable oils in the domestic market in India? Prices will start increasing. Will it not contribute to inflation? So I hope you understand. So protectionist policies imposed by India, that is also hurting us. Imposed by other countries, that is also hurting. So that will contribute to higher inflation. Okay. So next topic I want to discuss is a concept of dark patterns. Very, very new concept, but I'm pretty sure all of you have experienced this dark concept. Okay, now what is this dark pattern concept? Please have a look at the pictures here. Do not by heart pictures. UPSC is not going to ask you pictures. Let me ask you a very simple question. Tell me how many of you have not experienced this? You will open an app, right? Let's say Amazon. Again, don't write it in the exam. You want to purchase something. The moment you go to that particular page, there will be a timer which says, if you order within next 1 hour, I will give you 10% discount. Yes or no? Have you come across this? Right? If you order it in the next 10 hours, right, I'll give you 15% discount. Right? Have you come across this? That is nothing but a dark pattern. That is nothing but a dark pattern. Right? What is the dark pattern? I'll explain it. Don't worry. That is a dark pattern. I'll give you another example. You'll open a website. You want to close, right? Let's say you want to close a website and suddenly a pop-up will come. It will ask you want to close. You will click yes. And suddenly one more web page will open. Have you come across this? Right? You'll open a website and suddenly a pop-up will come. You want to close it and it will take you to another website. And this is a very common experience. Very, very common experience. That is also a dark pattern. I'll give you one more example. You want to order a product online. You will click on the product. It shows 200 rupees. You want to purchase it. You will say, right, purchase it, buy it. It will take you to the other page. But by the time you want to order it, along with the 200, there will be other expenditures added. Packaging fees, transportation fees, that fees, this fees, etc., etc. And right, the price would have gone up from 200 rupees to, let's say, 270 rupees. Have you experienced this? If anybody says, no, sir, I've not experienced anything of this sort, my dear, you're living in a vacuum then. You are simply living in a vacuum. I'll give a very simple example. Just half an hour ago, or let's say Around 45 minutes ago, I wanted to purchase a LAN cable. LAN cable, okay? Now, this particular LAN cable, I searched it in Amazon, right? 30-meter LAN cable. It said there was one option which said 288 rupees. I was very happy. 30-meter LAN cable for 288 rupees. I clicked on it and it took me to another page. And now it said 288 rupees is for 1.5 meters. You want to purchase a 30-meter LAN cable, then you'll have to shell out 899 rupees. This is also dark pattern. This is also a dark pattern, right? So I hope you understand. I'm pretty sure all of you have experience with this dark pattern, right? Without knowing what is a dark pattern. Now, very recently, Government of India has announced certain guidelines. I'll tell you what are the guidelines. So, Government of India has come out with certain guidelines regarding regulation of a dark pattern. Now, if you ask me, sir, what do you mean by dark pattern? This is the definition. This is a definition. It refers to design or user interface technique that is intentionally crafted. This is very important. That is intentionally crafted to manipulate or deceive users into making certain choices or taking certain actions that may not be in their best interest. I hope you understand this. I'll repeat the definition, slightly technical, but in simple words. In simple words, what's a dark pattern? It refers to an interface, or it is an intentional makeup, intentional design where you are not interested in doing something, but you will end up doing it. Is the logic okay? You're not interested in it, but you will end up doing it. For example, let me give you one more example. How many of you have experienced this? You want to read an article in a particular website. Suddenly, the website will throw a pop-up at you, say that please enter your right email ID. You want to get access to this article, please enter your email ID. And once you provide your email ID day in, day out, they'll keep on sending pop-ups to you. They'll keep on saying updates to you. That is basically a dark pattern. You are not interested in doing it. It is not in your best interest, but you will end up doing it. The term, the dark pattern term, was introduced by Harry Brignall. Please remember the name, right? It was introduced by Mr. Harry Brignall in the year 2010. And the dark pattern is also referred to as a deceptive pattern. Another name for a dark pattern is basically a deceptive pattern. Now, I said very recently, the government of India, and the government of India, that is a Department of Consumer Affairs, has introduced a set of guidelines. And in that set of guidelines, they've identified, remember this, they've identified 10 types of dark patterns. I repeat, they've identified 10 types of dark patterns. Now, this kind of a question can be asked in UPSC prelims as well as UPSC mains. I hope you understand. This kind of a question they can ask you in UPSC prelims as well as UPSC mains as well. For example, in UPSC prelims, they will ask a question like this. Which of the following are identified as a dark patterns by Ministry of Consumer Affairs? They will give you 3 to 4, then they'll start playing with you. Right? Only one is correct. Only 2 are correct. Only 3 are correct. All the 4 are correct. They can ask you this kind of question. Another kind of question in UPSC mains could be as simple as, what are dark patterns? What are the types of dark patterns? And what are the issues related to it? Elaborate. Discuss in 250 words. So please be very careful. This concept is very new in the governance of India. Again, when I say new, Government of India has announced guidelines very recently, and they've given time till October 5th for stakeholders to provide feedback on it. Now, what are the 10 types of dark patterns which have been identified by the government? False urgency, basket sneaking, subscription trap, confirm shaming, forced action, disguised ads, hidden cost. Hidden cost, there is one more name for this. There is a name called as a drip pricing. As per Government of India's notification, hidden cost is also referred as a drip pricing. Bait and switch, interface interference, as well as nagging. Now I'll just give you one more examples of all of them. What is this false urgency? I told you, if you open, let's say, any of these shopping website, they'll say order it within 15 minutes or order it in the next 10 hours, right? So that you can have delivery. Basically, one more example will be, let's say, sales which are live only for 1 hour. They will have a timer like this. For example, have a look at this picture here, right? Have a look at this picture. Second picture in the top row. Can you see the timer here? It will create basically a sense of urgency, right? It will create a sense of urgency with you. Many of the times they will give the data only 2 rooms left, only 5 seats left, only one product is left in the stock. That is basically the concept of, right, the false emergency. Okay, false urgency. Second one, basket sneaking. What is this idea of a basket sneaking? You will purchase a product. By the time you want to basically buy the product, they would have added some more other products related to it. Very simple. That, for example, you want to purchase a mobile. By the time you check out, they would have added, right, let's say, a mobile cover, right, along with the product and charge you, let's say, right, they will show 100 rupee, but basically they'll say it is discounted at 50%, they will charge you 50 rupees. That is basket sneaking. Adding additional products or services in the shopping cart without the consent of the users. That is called as basket sneaking. Subscription trap. I told you, you want to read an article, subscribe, right? Subscribe. You want to use it, subscribe, right? There is a subscription requirement. That is called as a subscription trap. But more importantly, you have subscribed to it. Now you want to cancel subscription. There is no FAQ for cancellation of subscription, or a cancel subscription button is there. It is hidden somewhere. Many of the times, right, the tools such as Instagram, or for that matter many of these dating apps, ask you to write a mail, you want to cancel subscription, etc., like this. So subscription trap. Next one is confirm shaming. Very interesting. What is this confirm shaming? Right, imagine you're traveling and there is a travel insurance product, right? You will book a flight ticket, let's say 5,000 rupees. The website also says to you, do you want to purchase insurance? Because you're traveling, insurance is better. You want to purchase. You will say, no, I don't want to purchase. Then they will suddenly give a pop-up to you. They'll show a pop-up which says, I'm okay to travel without any insurance. Or they will ask you to click and basically tick mark saying that I'm okay if there is any incidents or accident during this particular travel. I do not prefer insurance. I don't require insurance. These kind of pop-ups will be given. Or else, very famous, donations. Right? Very, very famous, request for donations. Right? So these are basically called as confirm shaming. This is called as confirm shaming. Forced action. Right, that is basically involves forcing consumers into taking an action they may not want to take, such as signing up for a service in order to access content, giving your email ID, giving your mobile number, right, etc., etc. That is called as a forced action. Next one is a nagging. Can I give you best example for nagging? YouTube, right? In case of YouTube, until very, very recently, couple of years ago, YouTube content was free without any ads, etc., etc. Now you start playing a video on YouTube, there'll be 2 ads. Right? There'll be 2 ads, not just one. There'll be 2 ads. You cannot skip. You cannot forward it. All the 2 ads will have to run completely for 30 plus 30 seconds. Only then, right, you can open up the video. And even then, I don't know how many of you have experienced it. You want to open the YouTube after the ads is over. Now there'll be one more pop-up which will say, go YouTube ads free. I hope you understand. Go for YouTube's ads free. This is called as nagging. Right? Refers to persistent, repetitive, and annoyingly constant criticism, complaint, and request for certain actions. Next, interface interference. I told you, you want to close the tab, you want to close a window. One more pop-up will come. You will hit on the cancel button. You will hit on the wrong button in the corner. One more window will open. That is basically called as interface interference. Next one, bait and switch. Right? Very classical, bait and switch. What do you mean by bait and switch? Imagine you order for this particular product. You will order for this particular product. Now, the supplier will call you and say, this product that you had ordered is not available. One example, this is not available. Next version is available. That will cost you extra 20 rupees. That will cost you extra 50 rupees. That will cost you extra 100 rupees. That is called as a bait and switch. Or else I'll give you one more example. They will show you this product in the right ad. But when I order it, the quality of the product will be very inferior. The plastic will be very thin. Right? Basically, if you drop it, it will break. Inferior quality product. That is called as a bait and switch. Right? Bait and switch model. Next one is drip pricing or hidden cost. Like I told you, you will choose a product at 200 rupees, but by the time you order it, multiple cost will get added. The 200 rupee product will become 250 rupees, 300 rupees. That is called as a drip pricing or hidden cost. And finally, disguised ads. Right? Whenever you read newspaper, certain products marketing is done. You are reading website, certain marketing is done as if they are giving content to you, the marketing is done. For example, now the trend has started. Of course, now the trend has started. Earlier, many of these influencers used to talk about a product as if they have not been paid money for them. Have you come across this? Earlier, this used to happen. Now they are disclosing it. Influencers are disclosing, yes, we are getting paid for it. That is the reason I'm using this product. I'm marketing this product. So earlier content was given. Even today, a lot of content on many of these websites, etc. It is advertisement, but it is given as if it is an information to you. Right? That is basically the concept of disguised advertisements or disguised ads. Done. So again, these are the 10 types. Right? These are the 10 types of dark patterns that Department of Consumer Affairs has identified. Please be very careful. Now, what is the concern? Why should you study about dark patterns? What is the right? What is the problem with the dark patterns? They mislead customers. That is basically the argument, right? You are violating the protection that is given by law to consumers or customers in the market. For example, by nagging, by basically creating false urgency, right? By bait and switch, you are basically not giving complete information to customers. You are disguising, right? You are basically using deceitful means, right, for selling the goods or services in the market, and customers are not happy with the kind of quality of service that they are receiving. That is the precise reason the Department of Consumer Affairs has released the draft guidelines to address the dark patterns and has sought feedback from you, from industry, etc., etc., till October 5th. If you have a complaint, if you have any issue regarding these guidelines, you can write to Department of Consumer Affairs. Now, how can this government of India or how can this department do it? Is there any powers given to the department under any of the laws? Please remember, there is an act by the name of Consumer Protection Act, CPA. Under the Powers of Consumer Protections Act, Section 18, the Department of Consumer Affairs has every right to issue guidelines whenever interest of the customers is at stake here, whenever customers are cheated. Now, who is covered under this? It will be applicable. Dark pattern guidelines will be applicable to whom? It will be applicable to all the platforms, the sellers as well as advertisers. And the dark pattern guidelines say that all the above shall not be engaged in practicing of any of these dark patterns. Now, many of you will ask me, sir, if there is a company which is involved in the dark pattern, if there is a website which is involved in the dark pattern, then what will happen? Right now, please understand, these are guidelines. These are guidelines. This is not a law now. But as far as the government of India is concerned, as per the guidelines, once these guidelines will come into implementation, if you violate any of these guidelines, then you shall be punishable under Consumer Protection Act. Under the Consumer Protection Act of 2019, if you violate any of these guidelines, you can be imposed with monetary penalties, that is money penalty. Penalties will be imposed on you. And if, right, even if you continue to do that, or if violation is very high, then along with monetary penalties, you can even be sent to jail. You can be jailed for it. So monetary penalties are there, even jailing provision is there under the Consumer Protection Act. So these are certain very important points regarding the concept of dark patterns, why there is a problem with it, what has the government of India done, and what will happen if there is a violation, how many types have been identified under the draft guidelines. So I've given a question based on this. What are dark patterns and issues related to it? Discuss these particular 2 pointers in 250 words. Right, question is for, right, a 15 marker. Okay. Next, the third article, 9 years of Pradhana Mantri Janadhan Yojana. But before that, right, let me address some of your questions. Please explain nudge in behavior economics. Okay, nudge behavior not required now. Basically, it's a type of a study where, right, certain policies or let's say certain measures, right, will be undertaken to basically change the behavior of consumers in the market. Okay. Who designs the dark patterns? Is the companies or website responsible for creation of dark patterns? Yes, the sellers, the advertisers are the creators of dark patterns. What is the significance of changing targets? Are we deliberately changing our stance towards controlling inflation? The argument of changing inflation target is that because, right, please understand, the external disturbances or external factors that have been contributing to inflation have not cropped up very recently. The onion prices accounting or contributing to inflation, tomato prices contributing to inflation is not happening only in 1 year. That's a constant that has been happening. Constant in the sense, every year onion prices go up, inflation goes up. Every year crude oil prices go up, inflation goes up. Every year one or the other factor, right, either vegetables or let's say the other crude oil material, etc., they keep on increasing in the increase in the prices that keeps on contributing to inflation. So the argument in that particular context is that if this is so common now, if it is so common to experience inflation above 6%, why not keep a target of 5% or 6%? So that RBI doesn't have to keep on changing their policies whenever the inflation changes in the economy. That is the argument. Okay. But sir, even if we change the target to 6%, it will still be burden for a common middle class because purchasing power will be low. Please understand, the topic of discussion was not how to control inflation. The topic of discussion was, should we change inflation target looking at the situation in Indian economy in the last 2 to 3 years. Okay. What are the changes can be expected by changing inflation rate? My dear, changing inflation rate, I hope you understand. Consumer purchasing power will be affected. RBI has to change policies. It will have an impact on exports. It will have an impact on, right, let's say exchange rate, etc. Sir, if inflation is due to greed, okay, even if we increase the inflation target the, okay, same question. Sir, if inflation is due to greed of some of the entrepreneurs, then what should RBI do in this case? My dear, please understand that is called as greedflation. Greedflation. RBI doesn't have any power in that situation. It is the duty of the government. How does UK maintain its inflation rate differ to larger extent than average inflation? Can't we do same thing? My dear, please understand, UK's economy is different, Indian economy is different, USA's economy is different. The policies that their central bankers will take or the government will take cannot be the same policies undertaken by us. So economy differs. What contributes more to the inflation differs from one country to another country. Okay, done. Let me go to the next one. 9 years of Pradhana Mantri Janadhan Yojana, PMJDY, 9 years. Right, and now what is this? PMJDY. I'll come back to PMJDY first here. Pradhana Mantri Janadhan Yojana. It is an initiative. It is an initiative that has been undertaken by Government of India to promote financial inclusion. Now, what is this financial inclusion? Financial inclusion basically refers to a situation wherein we are going to provide financial services to the needy people in a cost-effective manner. I'll repeat it again. What is financial inclusion? It refers to basic system wherein we will provide financial services to the needy people. Needy people, that's very important. To the needy people in a cost-effective manner. In a cost-effective manner. Sir, what do you mean by that? Let me give a very simple example. Right? If you talk about poor people, right? Let's say poor houses. If you ask them to open a bank account, but they will have to keep a minimum balance of 1,000 rupees. Don't you think a household which basically earns, right, let's say 1,000 rupees a month or 2,000 rupees a month or a 3,000 rupees a month, asking them to keep a minimum balance of 1,000 rupees is a burden for that house? I hope you understand this. So, under the idea of a financial inclusion, we will implement certain policies. I'll give you examples, don't worry. We'll implement certain policies through which we will make it easier for these kind of houses to get access to financial services. Example, Pradhana Mantri Janadhan Yojana. Sir, how does Pradhana Mantri Janadhan Yojana promote financial inclusion? Best example, if you open a Pradhana Mantri Janadhan Yojana account, even if you have 0 rupees in your balance, 0 rupee balance in your account, there is no penalty that you will have to pay. Is the logic okay with all of you? You open a PMJDY account, even if you have 0 rupees in your bank account, 0 rupee balance, they will not penalize you. They will not impose penalties on you. They will not impose charges on you. Otherwise, from one bank to another bank, you have a common account, not the Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana. You have a common, normal account. If your balance will fall below 1,000 rupees, they will impose charges on you. The bank will send a message to you. The bank will send a mail to you, warn you, your savings bank account balance is below minimum balance of 1,000 rupee. And they'll start imposing penalties, a cut amount from your bank account. So I hope you understand the argument here. It is to provide services to the needy beneficiaries. So best example for this is the argument of Pradhana Mantri Janadhan Yojana, which was launched by Government of India back in 2014. Now, apart from Pradhana Mantri Janadhan Yojana, apart from PMJDY, any other reforms which you can simply say it is a reform to promote financial inclusion? Best example is business correspondent or bank sathis. Have you come across bank sathi concept? Those people who are there from villages, they would have definitely experienced bank sathis or business or bank correspondent. Basically, the people don't have to go all the way 10 kilometers, 20 kilometers to the banking branch. In their village only, there is a representative of the bank. Right? The representative, bank sathi, bank mitras, or banking correspondent, they will provide all these banking services, but of course, they will charge a certain amount. That is basically the concept of a banking sathi, which is nothing but financial inclusion only. Nationalization in the banking sector. Banking sector nationalization was done back in 1969, 1980, etc., etc. And to ensure that banking sector, right, the opening of the branches will be focused more on more villages, tier 3 cities, tier 4 cities, etc., etc. Okay. Mandatory priority sector lending under PSL, loans will have to be given to, right? Let's say MSME sector. Loans will have to be given to, right? Let's say the startups. Loans will have to be given to agriculture sector, student loans, etc., etc. That is the argument here. Next, regional rural banks, which are more focused on one or two districts, cooperative banks, which are basically present in the villages, etc. So all these are some of the measures that have been earlier taken to promote financial inclusion. The most recent one and the most important one has been Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana. What are the features of PMJDY? These are the features. One, minimum balance is not required. You want to have 0 rupees in your bank account, allowed. It is completely allowed, right? RuPay debit card will also be issued to you. You don't have to pay any charges for RuPay debit card, right? Accidental insurance coverage is provided to you. Pension and a micro insurance product will be given to you. Now some of you will ask me, what do you mean by micro insurance product? Please understand this. If you want to subscribe or you want to purchase any insurance, normal insurance product, the insurance company will ask you to make a premium payment of 10,000 rupees. They will ask you to make a payment of 15,000 rupees, 20,000 rupees. Do you think these kind of insurance premiums are affordable for the poor people? That is a precise reason IRDAI, Insurance Regulatory Development Authority of India, has introduced the concept of micro insurance, where insurance coverage will be limited. But more importantly, the insurance premium payment, the charges associated with insurance will be very, very affordable, very, very low charges. This is called as a micro insurance product. Easy money transfer across India will be allowed. Overdraft facility of 10,000 rupees for eligible accounts is given. No charges are imposed on the beneficiaries to open Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana accounts. So these are certain very important features which are associated with PMJDY. More importantly, please remember this: the overdraft facility until very recently, overdraft facility was 5,000 rupees. Now it has been increased to 10,000 rupees. If your book says 5,000, please make it 10,000 now. Okay, OD facility is 10,000. Now some of you are asking, what do you mean by OD facility? OD facility or overdraft facility means even if your bank account has 0 rupees, no balance in the bank account, even after that also the bank will allow you to withdraw money up to 10,000 rupees. Up to is important. Up to 10,000 rupee withdrawal you can do it. But please understand, because in the bank account you did not have the money, you have taken, let's say, 8,000 rupees, the bank will basically treat this like a loan and charge interest rate on it. All of you okay with this concept of overdraft? I'll repeat it again. Right? Imagine you are the bank. I have a Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana account with you. In my account, 0 rupees is there, which means I cannot withdraw any money from the account. But I will be allowed under the OD facility to withdraw up to 10,000 rupees. Withdraw up to 10,000 rupees, but the bank will charge a rate of interest on it. How much they will charge? Generally, it is slightly higher, up to 2% higher, right, compared to the base rate. Now, again, don't enter into what is base rate, etc., etc. Okay. So, this is basically the concept of overdraft facility. Done. So again, these are the features associated with Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana. Let me go ahead. Now, what is the importance? What is the importance of 9 years of Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana? These are the important points. Point number 1. The total number of Jan Dhan Yojana accounts have crossed 50 crore. That is very important. Right? The total number of bank accounts have crossed more than 50 crore. And the total amount of money, total cumulative money in these 50 crore plus bank accounts is more than 2 lakh crore rupee. Here itself we can simply use a CSAT concept. 2 lakh crore divided by 50,000 crore. So per account, the average balance per account, can I say, is more than 4,000 rupees? Is the logic okay? Right? 2 lakh crore rupee divided by 50,000 crore accounts. Right, basic amount on an average in each, on an average, I'm not saying exactly amount, on an average, the amount in each of these bank accounts, PMJDY bank accounts is more than 4,000. Please have a look at the data. Right, earlier when it was launched in March 2015, on an average, the bank accounts, right, the total, on an average, the bank deposits were 1,000 rupee per account. Now it is a 4,000 rupee per account. What does it tell you? Please think of it. What does it tell you? Does it not mean people are saving more money and keeping more money under PMJDY accounts? Think of it and do let me know. Does it not mean people are more saving more money to keep under PMJDY accounts? That is first point. Second very important point is, if the banks can collect on an average 1,000 rupee in 2015, now on an average of 4,000 rupee, don't you think that has helped banking sector to collect more and more deposit, issue more loans to the market? All of you okay with this? It has also helped banks to collect more deposit and issue more loans because of Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana. That is benefit to banking sector. Benefit to banking sector. So earlier in 2015, the total amount that was collected under PMJDY accounts was 15,670 plus crore rupees. Now it is more than 2 lakh crore rupees. More than 2 lakh. So I hope you understand to what extent this scheme has helped even the banking sector to collect a deposit which they will use to provide loans in the right market. Third very important point is, can I say it has inculcated, I repeat, this scheme has inculcated the habit of savings amongst poor houses. I'll repeat the statement. This has inculcated means developed. It has developed a habit of savings amongst poor houses, and it has become a tool for keeping the savings for poor houses. And not just this, these houses will keep money in the deposits, they will earn interest also. So that is the importance of these kind of points. Now apart from this, right, all the factual information is given. My recommendation, do not buy out factual information, because you are going to write mains exam next year. So next year it will become 10 years. So factual information of next years you read it, but I hope you understand these points will remain same. That is, it has promoted the habit of savings amongst poor houses, right? It has basically helped banking sector to collect more and more deposit. These points will remain same. How much deposits they have collected, on an average how much they have collected, that number will change. But more importantly, look at one more point here. Zero balance accounts, right? Specifically I'm talking about this point. In fact, I've given in another slide also. Zero balance account, another under Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana, were 58% in 2015. That is, whatever the number of bank accounts under PMJDY back in 2015, 58% of these bank accounts had literally 0 rupee balance. Now, despite the number of bank accounts under PMJDY increasing more than 50 crore rupee, the number of bank accounts which have absolutely 0 rupee balance has reduced to 8% of the total accounts. Is it not an improvement? I hope you understand. Is it not an improvement? So back in 2015, number of bank accounts were lesser and more than half of them had 0 rupee balance. Today, the bank accounts are more than 50 crore, and only 8% of these have a zero balance, which means there is a huge improvement, right? And more people, rather than literally having 0 rupee balance in the bank accounts under PMJDY, they're depositing money. And next very important point, this is also very important. Last point, 56% of the JD accounts, Jandhan account holders, are women, and 67% of the total accounts in rural and semi-urban areas. Right? So I hope you understand the importance of it. Sir, what is the importance? Can I say PMJDY can be used as a tool for women empowerment? Let me know. Right? Can it be used as a tool for women empowerment? How? Let me take a very simple example. Manrega. Can we use a PMJDY, Jandan Yojana accounts, along with Manrega, ensure that more and more funds will be transferred, right, to women beneficiaries? Because Jandan Yojana accounts have been opened by women beneficiaries. So can there be a positive correlation? This is what I'm trying to convey with it. Right? Can there be a positive correlation between Manrega plus PMJDY in promotion of women empowerment? Right? So I hope you understand. And let me ask you one more question. Can UPSC twist this and ask you, how can we use a Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana to promote right inclusive growth in India? Can PMJDY used in promotion of financial inclusion, inclusive growth in India? Of course, yes. All of these connections you will have to establish. Don't be confused in UPSC examination. Okay, so similar points I've given here also. Have a look at this. Number of accounts have crossed more than 50 crore and deposits collected are more than 2 lakh crore rupee. The deposits in the accounts have more than doubled in the last 52 months only. Average deposit per account is more than 4,000 rupees now. Number of zero balance account is 8%. Women account for 56% of the deposits. 67% of the accounts in rural areas have been opened by women. Okay. Now, are there any issues? I'll come back to that. Don't worry. Some of you are asking, is there any issue? I'll come to that. Don't worry. What is the impact? What is the impact of such an initiative? Point number one. The government of India has used such schemes to plug the loophole in subsidy transfers. Now, please tell me, even if you have not attended the classes, many of you would have not attended economic classes, I do understand. But in earlier webinars, did we discuss the concept of direct benefit transfer? Let me know. I know I've discussed, but let me ask you people. Let me see how many of you remember it. In earlier webinars as well, did we discuss the concept of direct benefit transfer? So direct benefit transfer, we have discussed it. Some of you are saying no. My dear, please check the webinars. Please check webinars. I know I've discussed. Right? Some of you are saying no. I've discussed. Please check it. So direct benefit transfer is an initiative of Government of India where Government of India will identify the beneficiaries. And right, transfer the benefits to them through their bank accounts. If there is a bank account requirement, right, we will transfer the benefit into the bank account. That is called as a direct benefit transfer. As per Government of India's data, because now we are identifying the beneficiary and targeting the beneficiary and transferring benefit into the bank account of this beneficiary, because of this, 2.7 lakh crore rupee worth of subsidies have been saved. All of you okay with this? 2.7 lakh crore worth of subsidies have been saved for Government of India. The direct benefit transfers have also increased by more than 100 times. Let me show certain data to you people. The direct benefit transfers back in financial year 14 was 0.07 lakh crore rupee. 0.07 lakh crore rupee. And financial year 23, it has become 7 lakh crore rupee. So it has increased by more than 100 times using PMJDY. And right, how PMJDY will play a very important role? We have discussed the concept of JAM Trinity. I believe last month or a month before that, when I took webinar, same webinar, GS Paper 3 Economics, I've discussed JAM Trinity. So under JAM Trinity, one of the pillars is the Janadhan Yojana. JAM is Janadhan, Aadhaar and mobile. The first one is Janadhan. So you are using Janadhan Yojana accounts to identify the right beneficiary, transfer subsidies into the bank account of the right beneficiary, thereby reducing the subsidies that have been flown or that have been transferred by the government compared to earlier situation. Okay, has helped in promotion of women empowerment by the Government of India. The number of zero balance account have come down, which also means more and more people are right. Women are saving money. They are getting subsidies into their bank account, which will help in women empowerment. Banks are also pushing many other products such as micro insurance products, right, such as micro credit products through these Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana accounts targeting poor houses. So these are certain important points in order to basically prove that the PMJDY has provided a lot of benefits to especially the lower class in the society or poor sections in the society. Now, for those students who are asking, are there any concerns? Are there any issues related to this model, this kind of a scheme? For ensuring PMJDY, success of PMJDY, first and foremost, you should have bank branches. Even if the bank branches are not there, the banking correspondents must be there. But the problem with the banking correspondence, I repeat, problem with the banking correspondence is that they will charge you certain amount because they are providing services. They will charge you certain amount, and that is where, right? Please read this article. This is my assignment from my side to you people. Please read this article. Several districts do not have any banking presence, and please understand that the person who has written this article is a MP, Member of Parliament. So whatever data the MP gives obviously will be from the government document. Please read this article. So one of the constraints regarding the initiative has been that you need banking branches. But all the districts in India, even today, do not have the banking branches. And I'll tell you second concern regarding Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana. There is a concern. There is a concern that the holders of Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana account, right, accounts have been used as a mules. They have been used as a mules. Mules basically means, right, you are using something else, right? For example, imagine I've got a lot of black money. Okay, I've got a lot of black money. Scapegoat. Mules is nothing but scapegoat. So I've got a lot of black money, right? During demonetization, this was a concern during demonetization, even now, 2000 rupee currency note. So during demonetization, because I've got a lot of black money, rather than me going to the bank account, depositing all of this black money, then income tax officials coming to know that I've got so much amount of black money, what I'll do is, let's say I've got a lot of people who are poor, I know them, I'll pay 1,000 rupees to all of them, and into all these Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana accounts, I will transfer all of this black money. I'll deposit this black money. Now this black money will become white money. So I hope you understand, right? So there is also a concern that the PMJDY accounts are being used, or account holders are being used as mules, scapegoats in the economy for conversion of this black money into white money. Okay, right? So these are some of the concerns associated with the usage of PMJDY. The question on this, the PMJDY has helped in promotion of financial inclusion. Elaborate, right? 15 marker in 250 words. The next article that I'll be discussing will be, right, is a GDP growth rate sufficient? I'm discussing this article because of these right, newspaper articles. There was one article in Hindu newspaper. The issue is not about India's GDP, but its JDP. Second article, freedom from GDP philia. Third article, much more interesting, the problems with the Prime Minister's economic claims. Now let's try and understand what is this argument all about. What is the issue all about? The reason is very simple. The Prime Minister in multiple, let's say speeches, right, multiple times has highlighted, not just the Prime Minister, many of the economists also, many of the ministers as well. The argument that they have put forward is India's GDP is one of the largest in the global market. It is one of the biggest in the global market. Right, earlier, right, we were also one of the largest, but we were not in the top 5 or in the top 3. Earlier we were 8th largest, 7th largest. Today we are considered to be one of the top 5 economies in the global market, one of the fastest growing economies in the global market, right? And that argument has been put forward multiple times by multiple economists. But the counter argument to that is GDP growth sufficient to evaluate how India is performing? I hope you understand. Is GDP growth just sufficient to measure how the economy is performing? For example, have a look at it. Right, have a look at the data here. If you look at the rankings of various countries, right? Okay, some of you are asking what is GDP? GDP stands for gross domestic product. Point number one, GDP stands for gross domestic product. Now, what is gross domestic product? It is basically what is the market price of all the final goods and services which are produced in a country. Is the logic okay with all of you? Those who are attending classes for the first time, webinar for the first time, who are yet to attend economic classes, I'm just giving you a glimpse of GDP. GDP stands for gross domestic product. It is basically the total market price of all the final goods and services which are produced in India. We will calculate GDP for India. We will calculate GDP for USA. We calculate GDP for Britain, etc., etc. That is called as GDP. So whenever GDP increases, generally it is used as a tool. It is used as a tool to talk about how the country is performing, how the economy is performing. But the counter argument to that is GDP alone, I repeat, GDP alone is not sufficient to prove how Indian economy is actually performing. How India as a whole country is performing, GDP is not sufficient tool. Now, what has been the situation? What has been the situation in case of Indian economy talking in terms of GDP? If you talk in terms of GDP, please have a look at the data here. Do not by heart all these numbers. UPSC will not ask you the numbers. That is, what is the value of GDP for every country? Not required. So China, right? GDP of China, if you look at on purchasing power parity, PPP, GDP of China is the largest. What about India's GDP at PPP basis? India's ranking is the third largest. India's ranking is third largest. Okay. But if you talk about GDP, at constant prices, India's ranking is sixth, right? If you talk about GDP at current market prices, India's ranking is fifth. Now, those who are worried about how GDP is calculated, how PPP is calculated, what is constant prices, what is current prices, trust me, if I start discussing all of it, I'll take at least 1 more hour, right? That is the reason. Just understand this particular point. Now, if you have not attended economic classes, right now the next month in the economic classes are there, please attend it. Please attend it. Okay, so India's ranking ranges from the third largest to sixth largest based on what parameter are you looking at? What parameter are you looking at? And other countries also, such as USA, such as China, etc. These are also very, very highly ranked countries. So now this is basically the argument of government of India. India's GDP is one of the largest in the global market. It will become the third largest in let's say current market prices, or in current constant prices, and current market prices will become the third largest in the coming years. But is that sufficient? Is there a problem if you look at only that particular GDP number? Second point is, right, I'll come to that. I'll answer that question also, don't worry. Second point is, GDP is one factor. But more importantly, you'll have to look at a GDP per capita. There is one more term called as GDP per capita. What is a GDP per capita? Per capita simply means per person. I hope you understand. GDP per person. What is a GDP per person? That is also very important. So I hope you understand. GDP per capita for India is around $7,000, and national income per capita is around $6,500. Please remember this data. My recommendation is remember this data. GDP per capita is more than $7,000 and national income is $6,590 per capita. Per person, it is $7,000 if you talk about GDP, it is $6,500 if you talk about national income. Now, what is the importance of all of this data? Why should you focus on all of this data? Point number one. Tell me now, If you simply say GDP of India is, let's say, $3.5 trillion, will it provide the information regarding income inequality to all of you? Let me see. Right, that is the problem if you look at only GDP number. When you look at only GDP number, this is a concern. You'll have to write all of this in UPSC mains if a question is asked. Will this 3.5 trillion number, will it tell you how many people are poor in India? And interestingly enough, some of you are saying yes to this. If I tell you India's GDP is $3.5 trillion, will you be able to tell how many poor people are there in India? Can you tell me how much on an average is the earning done by poor people in India? If your answer by any way is yes, and in fact some of you are saying yes, then please do enlighten me also. Please tell me how is that possible looking at only GDP number? If India becomes third largest economy in the global market, does it tell you how many people are poor in India? Absolutely no. Does it tell you? Does it tell you how much is the income earned by richest person in India? How much is the income earned by poorest person in India? Can it tell you how many people reside in villages? Can it tell you how many children are undernourished in India? Can it tell you how many villages are right experiencing farmer suicides? Absolutely no. I hope you understand. Absolutely no. Because the argument is simple. GDP, if you talk about it, it is basically an economic data, quantifiable data. That's it. It's a quantifiable data. That is, GDP will tell you, simply GDP will tell you what is the market price of all the final goods and services produced in India. In fact, if you look at GDP number, right, think of it. Let's say GDP of India is $3.5 trillion. Can it tell you how much is the contribution from Indian nationals in this? Can it tell you how much is the contribution from Indian citizens in this? Absolutely no. Is the logic okay? Is it making sense to all of you? Right? How much is the profit earned by Indian companies? Indian companies is important. Right? So that is the reason only targeting GDP number, only targeting GDP is not sufficient. For example, Government of India always talks about inclusive growth. Correct? Government always talks about inclusive growth. Again, I'll use a statement, a punchline of Government of India, do not make it political. Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas. What does it mean? What does it mean? Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas. It simply means everybody, right? Everybody in India will get the benefit of growth that we are experiencing. We will not live poor. We are going to even take care of poor people in India. That is it not concept of inclusive growth? Are we not targeting inclusive growth? Of course, yes. Right. So I hope you understand whenever you talk about GDP, GDP is a part of it. If GDP increases, it doesn't necessarily mean, underline the term, it doesn't necessarily mean that everybody is becoming better off in India. It doesn't mean, right? It could have happened because of a foreign company which is earning profits in India has earned more profit. Can GDP increase even at lower employment levels? Of course, yes. Right? Of course, yes. At lower employment levels, GDP can increase. So I hope you understand the argument, counter argument that has been put forward by many experts. Government talks about GDP. It is not sufficient to only target GDP. We should also talk about other indicators as well. Only then we'll be able to achieve the concept of inclusive growth. Now, what are the issues related to this? Before that, nominal GDP for India is $3.3 trillion and fifth largest in the world. Do not by heart this number. Next year when you write the exam, so whatever is the ranking, please by heart there. Real GDP is $3 trillion and is ranked sixth in the world. PPP based GDP is $10 trillion, is third largest in the world. Okay, this is basically the data. Now, what are the issues or concerns? Around 45% of 45.5% of labor in India is involved in agriculture sector. And now tell me, having looked at agriculture sector, not even read, but at least looked at in the newspaper, Do you think all the farmers are earning more incomes in the agriculture sector? Is there guaranteed incomes in the agriculture sector? Is there any stable source of income in the agriculture sector? I'll give you a current affairs example. Couple of months ago, some of the farmers hit a lottery when the prices of tomato shot up to 200 rupees. Correct? Some of the farmers, not all the farmers, some of the farmers hit lottery, right? I'm pretty sure you must have come across in the newspaper, in the news also, where many of the farmers earned lakhs of rupees only because of tomato prices. But look at the current situation. Couple of weeks ago, you can check it in the Google, by the way. Couple of weeks ago, there was distress amongst some of the farmers because they have cultivated tomato looking at the prices couple of months ago, and now tomato prices have crashed. Right, today the tomato prices have crashed. I don't know how much is the price of the tomato in your city or in your villages. In place where I live, tomato prices are 10 rupees per kg, 15 rupees per kg, 20 rupees per kg. So I hope you understand the situation. Understand the situation. There is no guaranteed incomes in the agriculture sector, right? Agriculture sector suffers because of external factors as well as internal factors. I'll give you one more example. Right? In earlier webinars, right, classes, I would have discussed this for sure, but in the webinar earlier, I discussed a concept of open market sale scheme. I'm connecting it to current affairs, by the way. Okay. Open market sale scheme, right? That is, if you've read, I believe, yesterday's Hindu newspaper, right? Yesterday or day for yesterday, in central page, there was this article, right? That is, Government of India will procure the food grains, store it, and whenever the prices will go up, will introduce these food grains in the market to stabilize prices. All of you know this, right? Government through various agencies, for example, Food Corporation of India, will purchase the food grain, and if the prices of the food grains will go up, will introduce in the market these food grains and reduce the prices in order to protect customers, in order to protect consumers in the market. But please think of it. In order to control the prices and protect consumers by doing OMSs, is Government of India not reducing the income of the farmers? In fact, this was discussed couple of days ago in the newspapers. I'll repeat it again. In order to control inflation, protect consumers, government by doing OMSs, is it not reducing the income earned by the farmers? That is, if the government had not conducted OMSs, the price of wheat could have been 60 rupees per kg. Those who are questioning me, how, etc., let me give a very basic idea. If the government had not sold food grains in the market to OMSs, the price could have been 60 rupees per kg, which means a farmer would have earned 60 rupees. Now, because government will conduct OMSs, price will cool down from 60 rupees, let's say, to 50 rupees per kg. From 60, the price will cool down to 50 rupees per kg, which means the farmer, rather than earning 60 rupees now, will earn only 50 rupees. Is it not loss of revenue for the farmers? So I hope you understand. I hope you understand all these aspects, right? I hope you understand, recognize what is a negative aspect of these kind of operations of Government of India. So I hope you understand these points. Point number one, 45.5% of the labor in India is involved in the agriculture sector, right? And there is a problem with agriculture sector. There is no guaranteed income, guaranteed returns because of Government of India's right participation, right? There are so many factors which are affecting the farmers' revenue. The standard of living is represented by the GDP per capita, but India has the lowest GDP per capita in G20 countries. G20, right? I'm pretty sure all of you have come across G20. Anybody who has woken up only today to ask me what is G20, let me know. Anybody who has woken up only today, right, suddenly looking at the term G20, sir, what is this G20? Right, I believe all of you have come across G20 convention. that took place very, very recently in India. Okay. So India's the GDP per capita. The GDP per capita for India is the lowest amongst the G20 countries. You might be one of the largest economies in terms of GDP number, but GDP per capita, you are the lowest in G20. Employment generation in 1980s to 1990s, every 1% of GDP growth rate meant that there will be 2 lakh formal jobs created. I hope you understand. Right? 1980 to 1990, between that period, for every 1% of GDP growth rate, 2 lakh jobs were created in India. Now that has been reduced to 1 lakh in 1990s and further has come down by half in next decade. I hope you understand this. Right? In 1990s, for every 1% growth rate that we achieved, the number of jobs that were created in the economy were 2 lakh jobs. That has come down to 1 lakh in 1990 and further has come down to 50,000 in recent times, which means we are achieving higher GDP, no doubt. We are achieving higher GDP, but the number of jobs which are created are very, very low in India. Have you come across that term, jobless growth, in the context of India? Let me know. Have you people come across the term jobless growth in the context of India? What is this jobless growth? Jobless growth is a situation wherein the country will experience a higher GDP. I repeat, country will experience a higher GDP, but employment growth rate will be very, very low. Right? Employment generation is very low, but GDP is very, very high. Such a situation is called as jobless growth situation. And generally, India is said to experience jobless growth situation. Okay, done. So these are some of the issues or concerns. In addition to this, income inequality is not represented in GDP numbers. Income inequality, no, there is no representation. What about pollution? What about the pollution indicator? Don't you think pollution is also very important? Think of it. Pollution is also very important because you cannot claim to be the largest GDP. I'm just giving a hypothetical situation. You cannot claim to be a highest GDP, but also highest polluting country in the world. So I hope you understand even pollution control. Does GDP data tell you about how much forests have been cleared? Does GDP data tell you about how much emissions we are contributing to the global market? Absolutely no. So there are a lot of issues or concerns which government of India also need to focus upon rather than focusing only on GDP data. Done? Okay. So regarding this, there is a need to go beyond economic growth for India to achieve inclusive growth. Elaborate 250 words, a 15 marker question. Okay. Fifth article, I've taken next two articles are from Yojana. One is agriculture sector, a journey from shortage to surplus situation, and the other one is vision for industry. But before that, if you've got any kind of a question, let me address those questions. What is the inference that can be done from the statement India has a low per capita income but high GDP? The inference is that the income inequality is very, very high. Population which is present in India is also very, very high. I hope you understand this. I hope you understand the point that I'm trying to make. There is a term called as, right, again, slightly entering into social issues, etc. Because there is lot of overlap. That is, there is always this argument that India has a demographic dividend. Have you heard of this? India has a demographic dividend. What is this? A demographic dividend, which means India has a large working population. Because you have a large working population, you can always get benefit from this population because workers are very high in number. You will increase production. GDP will increase. That is called as demographic dividend. But please think of it. Please think of it. If all these people, despite having so much of population, if all the people do not get jobs, and GDP of India also keeps on increasing. Now, some of you will ask me, sir, how is that possible? If people don't get jobs, can the GDP increase? Of course, yes. Can I give you an example? Artificial intelligence. Think of it. Artificial intelligence. So artificial intelligence, can it lead to certain unemployment? But despite having unemployment, can it contribute to GDP? Of course, yes. What if investment is done in machinery rather than creating employment? Can that also contribute to GDP? Of course, yes. In fact, these are some of the reasons why there is a jobless growth phenomenon in India. So I hope you understand the problem here. GDP can increase, but with that, we also need to ensure that the benefit of this GDP growth rate will reach to all the sections of the society. Otherwise, there is this argument: demographic dividend will become demographic disaster for India. Is the statement okay with all of you? I'll repeat it again. Demographic dividend will become demographic disaster for India, because later on, this population which doesn't have a job today will become a burden for the economy. Again, do not take the term burden negatively. I hope you understand. Do not take the burden negatively. Why I'm saying it's a burden? If the population does not have a job, no savings, what if they reach the age of 60 plus years? Can you expect them to work then? No, obviously you cannot expect them. So don't you think the burden on the healthcare sector will be higher? The burden on the government of India to provide free food grains or subsidized food grains, subsidy for construction of housing, subsidies in the form of pension payments, etc. Don't you think that will become a burden for the government? So in that context I said demographic dividend will become a demographic disaster or a burden in the future. So I hope you understand what is the meaning of the concept when I said GDP is increasing, but GDP per capita is very low. Is calculation of GDP per capita is correct because it includes incomes of the richest person? Of course, yes. Right? Whenever you talk about GDP, whether you're rich, poor, etc., doesn't matter. Every income generated in the economy will be accounted for. Can we compare OMSS to Black Swan event? No. What is the interest rate of PMJDY and why private banks provide more interest rather than public sector banks? What is this? Provide more interest rather than public sector banks? I am unable to know that. But what is the interest rate in PMJDY? There is a website, by the way, pmjdy.gov.in. There's a document which has been uploaded by the government of India. The interest rate on the overdraft facility, the interest rate on the overdraft facility is whatever is the base rate plus 2% interest rate. What is the way forward for black patterns or dark patterns? The way forward, I've already told you. Right now, the government of India has announced guidelines. If the companies which are providing these kind of services or advertisers, if they violate these dark pattern guidelines, then they are liable to be punished as per the provisions of Customer Protection Act, under which there can be right monetary penalties, there can be imprisonment as well. Okay. Can I say GNP, NNP as compared to GDP give right data for growth? Not necessarily. NNP is very qualitative. NNP is very, very qualitative compared to GDP and GNP. But even NNP will not talk about what is income inequality. Even NNP will not talk about how much pollution we are causing. Even NNP will not talk about many other factors as well. Not understand how GDP is related to pollution. My dear, uh, let me know. If pollution is very high, can it cause adverse events, right, which will lead to unseasonal rainfall? Yes or no? Has it happened? Of course, yes. Right? If the pollution is very high, can it have right a situation wherein the temperature, global average temperature, will increase by 1 degree Celsius? If there is a rise by 1 degree Celsius, 2 degrees Celsius, 3 degrees Celsius, first and foremost, right? If you read in geography, I believe geography classes over for you, will you require certain optimal temperature for agriculture sector? Think of it. Will you require certain optimal temperature for our agriculture sector? Why do you think some of the agriculture products are cultivated only in the northeast? Why do you think some of the agriculture commodities are cultivated only in southern India? Why not across India? Right? Because you require soil, you require temperature, you require rainfall, etc. etc. So I hope you understand. Sea levels will increase, right? Unseasonal rainfall will happen, floods might take place. All of this is connected. Right? That's a reason. Please understand the connection here. Think of it. Can UPSC ask you a question like this? The sustainable development goals and inclusive growth both are connected to each other. Elaborate. For example, I'm giving you a question like this. The SDGs, sustainable development goals, and let's say inclusive growth, both are connected to each other. Elaborate in 150 words. So there will be a there will be a connection like this, and UPC can ask your question related to like this. Okay. Now, fifth article, agriculture, a journey from the shortage to surplus. This article is from Yojana magazine. Now, let's start. What was the situation at the time of independence in India? The private investment agriculture sector was very, very low. In fact, was not there in the agriculture sector. Why? Please think at the time of independence. Do not sit in 2023 and start arguing all of it. Imagine in 1947. Before 1947, you must have come across a zamindari system, right? A mahalwari system, raitwari system, etc., etc. Wherein argument was lot of land revenue was collected and very little investment was done, and whatever investment came was from basically farmers. So private investment in agriculture sector had died out, very less investment. Around 85% of the population lived in villages and derived their livelihood from agriculture sector, and there was a huge shortage of foods. Now please understand the situation. Independence, right? Before or during this time of independence, there was a partition. All of you know this, right? There was a partition, right? There was one India, United India was bifurcated into two countries, right? In fact, later became three countries. Don't worry, right? Pakistan and India. Now, what was the problem with this kind of a bifurcation? What was the problem with the division? Please understand the problem here. Most of the population remained in India. Most of the population, that is more than 80% of the population, right? As per statistics provided, around 82% of the undivided India, that population remained in India. Whereas only around 75% of the land that was used for cultivation was left out in India. All of you are able to understand the problem. Think of it. Around 82% of the population remained in India, but only around 75% of the land that was cultivated, used for cultivation, remained in India. But more importantly, there were regions which were called as a surplus regions. Surplus regions. Surplus regions are those regions where cultivation of agriculture is very, very, very high. Right? Agriculture sector output is very, very high. When there was a bifurcation like this, partition, India and Pakistan, lot of these surplus regions, that is agriculture fertile regions, went into the area of Pakistan. So I hope you understand, right? A lot of this good cultivable region went into Pakistan, lot of population remained in India, right, etc. That is the precise reason. That is the precise reason why there was a huge shortage of agriculture sector, or let's say food grains in India. And please understand this. Again, for UPC, all of this is not required. But if you are interested, there is a very nice book by the title Accidental India. There is a book by the name Accidental India. Again, please understand, not at all needed for UPC. Is it a compulsory reading for UPC? Absolutely no. There's a book by the name Accidental India, written by the author, Mr. Manishankar Iyer. Right? In that particular book, he has discussed in detail about what was the situation of agriculture sector even before independence. So one point I want to make here is, was the scarcity of food grains, did we face that after independence? Absolutely no. It was nothing new for India. Even before independence also, there was a huge shortage of agriculture in India. In fact, multiple committees were set up after independence and even before independence to study about agriculture sector in India. All of them pointed out the same thing. The requirement is very high. Production and supply in the domestic market is very, very low. Right? So, third point, only 15% of the farming was based on irrigation, and 80% of the land which was used for cultivation was rain-fed. From the mid-50s, the food prices started rising. Since the domestic production was unable to meet the demand, India started importing food grains. For example, India used to import food grains from USA. We used to import a lot of these food grains from USA, United States of America. There was a program by the name of PL 480. Have you heard of this? PL 480. PL 480 stands for Public Law 480. Under Public Law 480, USA used to export food grains to India. And please remember this, whenever any country exports food grains like this, they will try to get certain benefits. They will try to get something from your side. Okay. That is a precise reason over a period of time, in order to reduce our dependence, we shifted our policy. We started promoting the concept of green revolution. Okay. Now, this is a situation at the time of independence. Now, it's not that government of India did not do anything till green revolution. Do not be under that misconception. In fact, the first 5-year plan, which was implemented from 1951 to 1956, this was a duration for first 5-year plan. A high amount of allocation was given for agriculture sector. Agriculture sector was the focus in the first 5-year plan because of this particular situation itself. Okay. Now, what is this green revolution? In the Yojana magazine, they have simply mentioned green revolution, right? What is the outcome of green revolution and as well as white revolution. But let me give you overall viewpoint of green revolution. Green revolution basically refers to agriculture technology, which was developed during 50s and 60s by a team of agriculture experts at International Center for Maize and Wheat Improvement in Mexico and at International Rice Research Institute, IRRI. Now, if you ask me, sir, give me a simple definition of green revolution. Green revolution simply refers to set of technology. I repeat, green revolution simply refers to a set of technology where we used high quality seeds. What do you mean by high quality seeds? Seeds which will have higher yield, right? Which we'll be able to produce more crops per plant. So a high yield variety seeds along with irrigation facilities and fertilizers were used. So this combination of high yield variety seeds, irrigation, fertilizer, etc., it is called as a green revolution technology. All of you okay with the definition of green revolution? This is called as a green revolution technology. Now, right, what happened because of green revolution? Please have a look at this. Government of India allowed import of huge, right, quantities of these kind of high yield variety seeds. That is, in 1966, when we started promoting the concept of green revolution, we ended up importing 18,000 metric tons of new wheat varieties into India. With this, right, what was the outcome? The farmers were able to increase the productivity. Before usage of these seeds, the productivity was 1 ton per hectare. With usage of this quality of wheat seeds, the productivity increased fourfold from 1 ton to 4 to 5 tons. And as a result of this, overall production in agriculture sector also increased. And this situation in case of Indian economy was actually referred to as a concept of green revolution. Okay. Now, why? What has happened to the Indian economy after this? India's population has increased, and along with this population increase, the productivity or the production in the agriculture sector also has increased. But what has worked in our favor is that the production in the agriculture sector has outpaced means the growth in agriculture sector output has been much higher compared to the growth in the population. And as a result of this, today we are at a situation wherein the production is so high it is not only sufficient to meet the demand of the domestic market, we are also exporting food grains to the international market. We have reached that particular situation now. In fact, in fact, in recent times, I don't know how many of you have read these newspaper articles. Government of India, after imposing the restriction on wheat exports as well as rice exports, is there a concern about food security in the international market or not? Have you come across this? After Government of India imposed a restriction on the exports of rice as well as wheat, there was a concern raised about food security in the international market, because India is not just the major producer of this, it is also a major exporter of these commodities to the international market. So if India will stop exporting these, automatically, especially African countries, poorer countries, which imported these crops from India, will be affected by all of it. So what are the benefits of green revolution? The production has increased, and at that particular point of time, when the prices of food grains in the domestic market were very, very high, production increased, we were able to cool down the prices in the domestic market. Farmers were able to produce more, sell more, earn more. India, from a country of scarcity, has become a surplus country, exporting country for these crops. It has also helped government to procure and store more food grains, so also ensure they have sufficient food grains for distribution of poor houses. For example, National Food Security Act, Pradhana Mantri Garib Kalyan Anna Yojana. It has also led to huge amount of investment in the agriculture sector, and incomes in rural India have increased. But please understand, some of you will argue, sir, how can you say incomes in rural India have increased? Make a comparison before green revolution and after green revolution. The comparison is pre and post green revolution, right? Don't say even today farmers are not able to earn sufficient income, etc., etc. That's a fact. But compared to pre green revolution, post green revolution, the situation in Indian economy of the farmers has improved. What are the concerns or issues related to the green revolution? One, green revolution required a lot of investment by the farmers. The farmer, right? Farmer is supposed to purchase irrigation equipment. The farmer is supposed to purchase a high-yield variety seeds. Farmer is supposed to purchase fertilizer. So the states which had already higher income of the farmers, the state wherein farmers already had lot of revenue, those states actually benefited from it. Sir, any example of it? Punjab and Haryana. Punjab and Haryana. So Punjab and Haryana, right? And again, at some of the other northern states, right? The Green Revolution did not provide much benefit to southern region, and why I'll tell you that. These northern states, especially Punjab, Haryana, and some parts of Delhi, National Capital Territory, they got the benefit. Why? Reason is simple. They already have got very good access to irrigation. Right? They already have very good access to irrigation. Right? The similar kind of access to irrigation is not available to farmers in southern India. That is the precise reason. So depletion of groundwater, right? Because the irrigation, right? Irrigation availability was there. Many of the farmers started using the pump sets, right? The gen sets, pump sets were used to draw the water from underground and supply water for irrigation facilities. So groundwater, right, depletion has been experienced. Soil quality also has deteriorated, right, mainly because of chemical fertilizers that we used during green revolution. The disparities between the small and large farmers have increased, because large farmers already have got access to large amount of money. They are rich, they're able to purchase, right, they're able to use the irrigation equipment, better technology, etc. Whereas marginal farmers, poor farmers, in order to purchase equipment, in order to purchase irrigation, in order to purchase a fertilizer, they have borrowed more money, and some of these farmers have fallen into a lot of debt. In fact, there has been an adverse impact experienced by very poor farmers, because these poor farmers, if they are from southern India, they do not get any benefit from green revolution. If they are from Punjab, Haryana, Delhi, etc., they were forced to borrow, fall into a debt because of this. right? So these are some of the concerns or issues are associated with the green revolution. In addition to this, there are also certain points regarding white revolution which has been given in Yojana magazine. White revolution basically talks about more productivity and production in the milk sector. Now what happened was, basically have a look at this. At the time of independence, at the time of independence, the milk production in case of India was very, very low. And after independence, the population, no doubt, started growing very fast. Hence, the per capita availability of milk, per person availability of milk started dropping. Demand was very high, supply was lesser, and as a result of this, India started importing lot of milk and milk products into the domestic market. In order to address this, Government of India set up NDDB. NDDB stands for National Dairy Development Board. I repeat, NDDB stands for National Dairy and Development Board. NDDB was set up in 1964, and NDDB looked at one model that was followed in Gujarat, very, very famous even today, the Amul model, where cooperatives were set up. Cooperatives were set up, milk cooperative was set up, and these milk cooperatives basically provided benefit to very, very small producers, marginal farmers, right, poor farmers, wherein the pooling of resources was done, the milk resources were pooled together, and one cooperative was established which will provide all these benefit to the poor farmers. So this model which was followed in Gujarat was replicated by NDDB to promote more and more milk production in India. And that is a precise reason, right? By 1970s, the milk productivity production in case of India increased, and India, rather than importing this milk products into the domestic market, it became self-reliant on the domestic production itself. Even today, if you look at government data itself, even today, Government of India claims to be one of the largest milk producers in the international market. One of the largest producers. So by 1976, India stopped commercial imports of milk varieties and right became self-reliant to the extent that we are having more than required, more than the demand for the milk products in the domestic market even today. India now is the global leader of milk and has accounted for around 24% of the total milk production. In 1973, India accounted for only around 5 to 6% of the total milk production in the global market. Done? Right? This is basically referred to as white revolution. Okay, so other points which are given in the magazine are agriculture sector is facing challenges such as climate change, deteriorating natural resources, decreased fertility, etc., etc. Lot of technology is being used in agriculture sector. In fact, this was asked by UPSC this year. Technology in agriculture sector such as a drone technology, right, such as a enam technology, etc., which will promote or which will ensure more production, more productivity, lower wastages, etc. The agriculture startups are also contributing in the form of providing warehousing facility, providing drone technology, providing credit to the farmers, etc. So these are certain other points related to the article given in the Yojana magazine. The green revolution has increased the food grain production but has also led to certain unsavory outcomes. Elaborate in 250 words. Okay. The last article for you people, vision for industry. Right. One more article from Yojana magazine, vision for industry. Now, right, what are they talking in this article? What are they talking? Basically, they're talking about what reforms need to be implemented, what should be done in the coming years in certain industries. Now, why should we focus on these kind of reforms? The point they're trying to make is simple. In case of India, we have services sector, right, the tertiary sector. We have a secondary, that is industries, manufacturing. We have primary agriculture sector. There's a huge scope of employment opportunity available, huge scope of job generation in the manufacturing sector. As per the Yojana magazine, 70 million, that is 60 to 70 million jobs can be generated by 2030 within the manufacturing sector, right, in India. Now, how do we generate? How do we ensure that manufacturing sector contributes high? How do we ensure these kind of jobs are getting generated in the manufacturing sector? Those points are discussed in the article. Now, what can be done? Point number one, there is a concept of shifting global supply chain. Very, very famous now. What is this, a shifting global supply chain? I'll just give you certain important points here. Please remember this. Have you heard of China plus one policy? China plus one strategy or a policy which is being followed by many, many countries, many, many companies. What is this China plus one? Argument is during pandemic, right, the global factory, the major producer in the global market, which was China, it was affected, it was hit very, very hard because of the pandemic. The whole economy of China was affected to a very great extent. Sir, why should I be worried about China? Reason is simple. Because China is a major producer in the global market. If China is affected, automatically the exports from China would also be affected. For example, India imports a lot of automobile components from China. India imports very, very important inputs from in the pharmaceutical sector from China. There's a term called as activated pharmaceutical ingredient. We import solar modules from China. Until very recently, we used to import toys from China. Now, laptop and PCs are targeted by government of India, although not just for China, but any import of laptop and PCs. So, all I'm trying to tell you people is that during pandemic, it was realized that it is very risky to be overly dependent for these kind of inputs only from one country. Simple. Very, very risky to be dependent on only one country to get all of these inputs. And that is why there is this concept of China plus one strategy, where many companies are not only having production inputs from China, they are opening branches, they are opening manufacturing units in many other countries. Can I give you a current affairs example? Apple, the company Apple, which is which has launched iPhone very recently, iPhone 15, right? So the Apple company has a manufacturing base in China, but that has not stopped Apple from opening a manufacturing unit in India as well. I hope you understand. Many companies, Apple is one example, but many companies have started adopting this this strategy where rather than being dependent only on China, they want to focus on one more country. Now the argument of this article is government of India should promote this concept, wherein because the labor availability in India is very high. All of you agree with me? Labor availability is very, very high. India can leverage this concept, attract more and more investments into India. And that, please remember this, if I attract more investment, right, automatically labor employment opportunities would be created. Investment means production will be increasing. If production increases, contribution to GDP increases, exports will start increasing, import dependence will come down. All of them will provide benefit to India. That is where schemes such as PLI, have you heard of this? We have discussed even in the earlier webinars. PLI, production linked incentive, Make in India initiative, Startup India initiative, etc., etc., will play a very important role. So, one reason why should India focus on manufacturing sector? What should be done? Shifting global supply chains will give you an opportunity to do that. Okay. Second one, infrastructure strengthening. Right? What is this infrastructure strengthening? I'll give a very simple example. Would you require very good port infrastructure to promote manufacturing sector in India? Would you require very good, right, let's say, the highways, national highways infrastructure to promote a manufacturing sector in India? Would you require, right, let's say power infrastructure? Power is nothing but electricity. Electricity infrastructure to promote manufacturing in India? Of course, yes. So there is a need to develop lot of this infrastructure in the domestic market. It could be national highways, it could be development of waterways, it could be development of ports. Some of you are asking, sir, how port is connected to manufacturing sector, industrialization generally. My dear, the argument is, imagine you want to manufacture this product, but for manufacturing of this particular product, you will require certain import. And most of the imports that are done in India, I repeat, most of the imports that are done in India, in terms of volume, it is done through the port infrastructure only. Or you have manufactured it, you want to export it to, let's say, USA, right? You will require again ports only. So I hope you understand there is a very close linkage between port infrastructure, warehousing infrastructure, or even highways infrastructure, which is connected to industrialization in the market. In case of India, has government of India implemented any initiatives to promote all of this infrastructure? For example, port infrastructure. Have you heard of Sagarmala initiative? Let me know. Have you heard of Sagarmala initiative? Right. So Sagarmala promotes a port modernization, port development, etc. What about highways? What about the highways in case of India? I'll just give you a best example. Right. The example for promotion of national highways is expressways. Bharatmala initiative. One is Sagarmala for port. Second one is Bharatmala for national highways. What about electricity sector? Right, we are promoting lot of let's say usage of the technology for what is that? Capturing of sunlight into solar energy, wind energy. We are promoting a lot of energy independence, or let's say rather than being dependent on imports, we are promoting energy independence in India. But we have a long way to go. I hope you understand. We have a long way to go. For example, in today's newspaper, I believe it was there in Business Standard. If you look at the imports into India, around 35% of the value of imports is on account of right, energy imports. Energy, again, please understand, when I talk about energy, it is not electricity, just electricity. What about crude oil? I hope you understand. What about crude oil? Crude oil is also associated with energy. So around 35% of the total value of imports is basically energy imports into India. And we need to reduce that dependence. We need to reduce that dependence. So I hope you understand, Government of India is taking a lot of measures in order to promote the infrastructure, strengthening of infrastructure in India, that will promote basically industrialization. Digital revolution, right, needs to be promoted in manufacturing. For example, how digital, right, how digitalization, or let's say technology, digital revolution is nothing but technology. How technology is useful in manufacturing sector? For example, can we use a technology to assess a demand in the market? Can we use a certain technology to ensure production, right, the productivity will improve? Can we use a technology to make logistics much more efficient, etc., etc.? So digital revolution is taking place in India, but Government of India needs to ensure there is promotion of usage of technology in the manufacturing sector, promotion of usage of technology in the industrial sector. And if we promote and adopt more and more technology in industrialization, that will help us in improving productivity, ensuring a stable supply, making transportation or logistics much more efficient, planning for the demand and supply much more better way. Next one is a sustainable manufacturing, right? Right, sustainable manufacturing. Right? What is the requirement of sustainable manufacturing? First and foremost, what do you mean by sustainable manufacturing? Right. So I hope you understand, sustainable manufacturing will basically involve certain, right, let's say methods, certain policies that are going to be implemented, which will ensure that we are not going to deplete all the resources that are available to us. We are not using all the raw materials inefficiently. We will use all these inputs in such a manner that we are not going to abuse these resources, right? For example, right, if you ask me, sir, any example of all of this, in many cases we have shifted, we have moved from old technology to a usage of a new technology, because now we have realized, right? Best example for this, transportation sector. Is government of India promoting electric vehicles? Is government of India, rather than right using only petrol or diesel for that matter, is government of India promoting alternatives to it? Is government of India promoting usage of biofuels, right, etc., etc.? So I hope you understand there is a need to focus on the sustainable manufacturing aspect as well, so that we are not going to abuse the availability of resources. We are going to make the best utilization of the resources that are available to us, right? Now, in order to do all of that, what further reforms need to be undertaken by government of India in the coming years? One, government of India needs to ensure there is a single window clearance for all these sectors. What do you mean by a single window clearance mechanism? Imagine you require, let's say, 10 licenses. I'm explaining to you what is single window clearance. Imagine you require 10 approvals at 10 licenses. Rather than going to all the 10 departments or 10 ministries, all these approvals will be given at only one place. This is called as a single window clearance. Sir, any example of a single window clearance? Whenever you talk about FDI, in lot of the sectors we have single window clearance. Is it okay? In lot of the sectors in FDI we have single window clearance. What about a model called as SEZ, special economic zones? Even in case of special economic zones, we have a single window clearance. So there is a need to ensure that in all the sectors there is a single window clearance mechanism. Skilled labor availability is present, because please understand, many experts argue that one of the reasons why labor employment creation is not happening at a very faster pace is because the skilled labor availability in India is very low. Is it okay? I'll repeat it again. One of the reason why employment growth rate is not very high in India is because the skilled labor availability is very low. Right? Hardly around 11% of the total labor in India, as per economic survey, has got any sort of a skill set. Which means, right, people, that is employers, want to provide jobs, but they are not finding right people with the skill set in the economy. Right? So we need to ensure skilled labor availability is there. Government must provide incentives for investment in research and development, technological investment, etc. So these are some of the way forward, or some of the reforms that government of India needs to ensure in the coming days in order to promote industrialization. So finally, a question based on this: discuss the issues faced by the India's manufacturing sector and recent reforms undertaken by the government to address them. A 15 marker question, 250 words. Okay, right? So these are the 6 topics that I wanted to discuss with you people today in the webinar. If you have any concerns, any questions regarding what I've discussed, please do let me know. Otherwise, we can wind up the discussion for the day. Sir, most of the villages are not coming under the irrigation. About what about those? Like Karnataka facing issues with the rain-fed land. Please understand, even if there is no proper irrigation facilities, and now government of India is promoting irrigation facilities, I can give you many examples for this. Okay, government is taking a lot of measures to promote irrigation, but specifically within irrigation, your argument should be the irrigation that we should promote should be micro irrigation. It should be micro irrigation. Okay. As surplus food grain, sometime in news restriction on export of it. Why these restrictions then? My dear, please understand. Overall, in case of India, if you look at the situation of food grain production, the food grain production is higher compared to the demand. But in certain years, I repeat, in certain years, What happens is, because of either external factors or internal factors, there is a mismatch between supply and demand. It's not permanent. In certain situations, this does happen. For example, in the last couple of months, because of excess rainfall or now because of lower rainfall, our agriculture production would be affected. But that doesn't mean that this is a permanent situation in case of India. Only certain time periods, because of this, there's a mismatch between supply and demand, and that is when government of India imposes restriction to protect domestic interest. Okay, any other questions? Any other questions? Any other questions? Sir, on one side, Chinese products are not trustworthy. On other side, India purchases or imports the same from China. The reason, right? The reason is very simple, because the domestic production is not sufficient. We do not have sufficient production in the domestic market. How there is a connection between DBT and subsidy? I'll give a very simple example. Earlier LPG connections. Earlier, all the houses in India would get LPG connections. In some of the houses, multiple LPG connections were there, which meant that government of India provided subsidies, and in some of the houses, multiple beneficiaries were there. Now, government of India says any beneficiary, first they will have to have a bank account. Second, whatever subsidy I will provide to them, it will be given directly into the bank account. So if a particular house has a multiple LPG connections, only one LPG connection will be given, and right, multiple or duplication will be eliminated. For example, imagine in my house, earlier two LPG connections were there. We used to use multiple LPG cylinders, get lot of subsidies. Now government of India will simply give only one LPG connection and subsidy for it. So automatically subsidization will come down. Okay. 10,000 to eligible account holders means, sir, for whom that OD will be provided, there are certain conditions. You can check it, but not required. There are certain conditions based on what is the balance in the last 6 months, right? Based on the assessment of the account by a bank expert for last 6 months, certain conditions will have to be met. Based on that, the OD will be provided. Okay. Okay, done then. So let me stop the discussion today, right? So next month again we'll take up very important articles from the current affairs, again solely focused on UPSC mains. So see you again next time. Take care. Good night.